Introduction, Braxton Storm is a skilled psychotherapist with 7 years of experience specializing in helping children, teens, and their families overcome emotional and relational barriers, both past and present. His work focuses on empowering individuals to build healthier relationships with themselves and others, in addition to offering individual therapy. Braxton has been featured on several podcasts to discuss parenting topics. He's also the creator of an 8-week parent-centered course designed to help parents recognize how their behaviors impact their children, understand the root causes of these behaviors, and take steps towards healing and improving their relationships with their children. And here's Braxton.
Thank you guys so much. The title of my presentation, The Power of Vulnerability, Communication That Connects, I think is really crucial, and I hope that in my presentation we kind of compound all the things that we've learned so far. I think all of this goes well together. We're gonna get going. And this first slide, I want you guys to read this. Before you read it though, how many of you have had a conversation with your teens, your grandkids, about homework? Raise your hand. How many of you guys have had successful conversations with your teens about homework? Okay, less hands, right? That's good. That's awesome. So many of you probably have learned some of these skills along the way. Read this, think about it. Maybe it's relatable to you. If you can't read it, I'll read it to you. So this is a reflective experience. It says, you are fed up with your teen's poor performance in school. You decide to talk to your teen about responsibility. You tell them to put their phone away and listen to you as you talk about schoolwork. Your teen sighs, rolls their eyes, and mutters, I know, leave me alone, while barely looking up. You feel frustrated and unheard, raising your voice slightly and repeating the request with more urgency. Your body language becomes tense, and you may cross your arms or let out a heavy sigh, feeling dismissed and disrespected. Now, I put this mildly, right? I work with some parents who probably have an overreaction, maybe more intense than this. Maybe we start yelling. Maybe we say, fine, just go to your room, right? We're going to talk about this later. You can't have your phone anymore, right? Whatever it might be. I'm just curious, and you guys can answer this. What thoughts do you have when your teen isn't responding the way you want? Anyone? Yeah, I'm a failure, right? I didn't do it right. Why is this going this way? Why isn't my wisdom being imparted the way that I thought it would? Yeah, of course. Yeah. Sure. Curiosity, that's great. That's awesome. Anyone else? Yeah. Is there a bigger problem? You guys are awesome, right? These answers are great.
They're being disrespectful.
They're being disrespectful, right? That's a real answer, right? Geez, like they're so disrespectful. Why aren't they listening to me, right? Do they know who I am, right? I'm their mother. I'm their father, right? I'm really important. Yeah.
So then think what's happened this role or what you want in real life to make you not want.
Yeah, what else are you doing? There has to be something else going on, right? There's some mischievous behavior behind this lack of score.
Sometimes it's not stupid. It's more like Clara's right, and she has these ideas that we're right and choosing those and all like that.
Right.
It's everything else is the nature.
Yeah.
So when she forgets everything else, it's not really it's like right. So it's not really bad things, just kind of like I don't think it's experiencing work because he's right. His ideas for each right now, and it's I'm gonna write it down right now. Hold on, pull out the homework. Eventually, I get some homework. This idea is work. And I told her, I was like, if you don't do sixth grade, you won't be able to graduate because you want to discuss. And I didn't tell her in the coffee it was getting.
Yeah.
Frustrated.
Yep.
And so, and then she, I don't know, eventually went to apologize because I overreacted. And then she realized, I said to her, I missed them. I was like, she's mad. It's the third time I've done this. And the teacher's complaining about the same thing.
Right.
And then I said to her, I missed them. Right, it's great, but if you want to be a writer, do this very well.
Yeah.
Try to hold up the feelings.
What's your name? You should just come up and do this presentation. You're doing great. We're going to cover all these topics. That's awesome. That's great. we have high-quality parents here. I'm from Henderson, Nevada. I don't know if the parenting quality is as great there because you guys have great answers. Most of the parents I work with don't have these answers.
Mine kind of yeah, so I think we're so involved. I'm like feeling weird, like lost control.
Yeah, yep, we're going to talk about this too. Yeah, it's intense, right? It's very real. And oftentimes, I think as parents, we're going to talk about this, but we project our insecurities onto our kids. And if they change, then I feel better, right? If they start doing their homework, if the school stops calling, then I feel as if I'm a better parent. It's more validating to me, right? It's kind of like Janine was talking about the generational gap, right? Like parents before were like, if it looks good, it must be good, right? I think sometimes we fall into that too. If our teen looks good, if our kid looks good, then I'm a good parent, right? Okay. How many times do we think about their perspective? How many times do we get curious about it, right? What emotions does the teen experience when a parent is lecturing, demanding, or criticizing? And what does the teen need from their parent to feel connected? When I talk about connected, I really like Brene Brown's definition of connected. It's the energy that exists between individuals when they feel seen, heard, and valued, right? So like, again, like Janine talked about, I do the same thing. When parents and teens are in my office, I separate them as individuals, and we're not like parent-teen here, right? We're just individuals looking at each other and trying to empathize and validate and talk to each other as humans, right? I'm curious, have any of you gotten their reaction or their a response to this question about what their experience has been when you're lecturing, criticizing, those types of things? Yeah, Janine.
Usually, you don't care about me at all, so why should I care about what you're saying?
Yeah. That's pretty much it, right? That sums it up.
My son, he's a teenager, middle of the road, 18 years old, but he has comorbidities. I don't know if it's better generalizing, bipolar disorder, and ADHD, and he's had all these things in his life.
Yeah.
So we've had a long journey, and we've actually had conversations about this. His dad's much more authoritarian than I am. He's retired military. And he said, the dad doesn't do this, and you don't do that. And it makes me feel like you don't even care.
Yeah.
And so we've been working on that in our home. I got hold of him understand. You do care, big love. And then we're trying to figure out how he feels love, if I think religious love, to help him feel love. So that we can maybe have a better solution.
Right. So if I'm understanding you right, and I'm not trying to get critical, I just want to understand, you got this 5 languages book, or the information about it, and you're trying to, okay, that's wonderful. And so you're trying to teach him his love language so that you can better aid him?
Possible that we see, help us say that might be beneficial for you to fully identify. We think you know it is.
Sure.
But just to make sure you know this, we can, because he's very literal, you know, spectrum.
Yeah.
Variations.
Analytical, linear, factual.
Very.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a big package for our trying to help.
100%, right? I'm glad that story ended that way because I think for the majority of parents, at least the ones that I work with, it's kind of like, what can I do? What can I give my child so that they change, right? Like, what book can I get? What therapist matches with them, right? What medication can I get so that their behavior changes? And I don't really have to, I mean, literally, right? I don't really have to do much. Like, I'll drive them to the appointment and I'll drop them off and hopefully it goes really well, right? And they come out. I don't know how many parents I've had that have fired me because I don't get results just working with their teens. Especially when I first started, I would work a lot with kids and teens, and I'd bring them in and work with them for the 50 minutes, and they go home, and the next week the parents would be like, well, nothing's changing. I don't know what's going on. It's not working, right? What are your qualifications, right? And when I first started, I was like, gosh, like maybe I just really stink at this job, right? Like maybe it's not for me. And then I started learning specifically from Brene Brown and Dr. Dan Siegel, who are great in this field. And what I learned is that when we kind of reverse it and start working with parents first, right, and then work with teens and children, things go 1,000 times better. And so that's kind of where I got into parenting and why that's so important to me. So what is vulnerability? When we talk about vulnerability, we have a lot of, I think, misconceptions of what this is. And so here's some different things. Showing up as parents, messy and imperfect while staying present, open, even when we can't predict or control the outcome. I think one of you said, like, I just want to like control it. I've lost control of my children, especially when they have opinions and thoughts and behaviors that don't align with what we think they should be doing, right? But maintaining openness, maintaining compassion, maintaining that sense of, I guess, vulnerability, right, is really difficult for parents a lot of times. My kids are much younger, and I can tell you that it's really hard for me, right? I mean, I have a 5-year-old, that's my oldest, and it's really hard to maintain vulnerability and openness when I'm with him and working with him. Some key points. Vulnerability is a strength. A lot of us were born to, kind of raised to believe that being vulnerable was weak, and that's something we're going to talk about in a second, but like vulnerability, expressing emotions, accurately expressing emotions and identifying them, all of that is kind of like a weird taboo thing that we shouldn't be doing, right? We should just kind of hold it in. Everyone should, again, look good. But when we start expressing ourselves, it actually is really healthy. It requires emotional exposure, risk, and uncertainty. And I think a lot of times, you guys can tell me, but when we start yelling or getting frustrated or our emotions escalate in parenting, it's usually because there's something in our past that has taught us that this situation is unhealthy, right? When a kid disobeys, or when a kid has a different opinion, or a kid's doing something else than what we think they should be doing, that's wrong, that's bad, right? And it's usually, in my experience, what I've seen, is that it usually was you. You were taught that, right? From your caregivers, that those things were wrong, right? As long as you looked good, everything was fine. But the moment you questioned, the moment you were human, things didn't go so well for you, right? You were told to be quiet, just go over there, just do your homework, threats, right? If you don't, and we still do this, right? If you don't do this, then I'm going to take it away, right? Those things are very kind of difficult for teens to experience, for children to experience. And so now as parents, when we have these scenarios, it's like, I'll just like, get me away from this. How can I run away, right? And if I yell, then it stops, right? They look good. Everything stops. Vulnerability is expressing genuine feelings instead of defensiveness. And it fosters connection. Remember, connection is feeling seen, heard, and valued, right? It fosters connection by allowing parents and teens to feel safe. Brené Brown said this: vulnerability is the birthplace of love, belonging, joy, courage, empathy, and creativity. So anything good, right? Anything good in a relationship, really, comes from being vulnerable. If you think about, I mean, those of you who are married or in any sort of intimate relationship, the only reason it's working is because you guys are vulnerable, right? If you break it down, the only reason your relationships that are healthy in your life are working is because you choose to be vulnerable to some level. Now, that level of vulnerability fluctuates, but there's a level of vulnerability in every relationship that works. Does that make sense? Vulnerability is not oversharing or burdening your teens with adult problems. So that, you guys have your own issues. As parents, we have our own issues. That's not going to your teen and saying, well, this is going on in my life, and if you just, understood me, then no, right? Like, that's not what we're trying to achieve. They're not your therapist, right? You need to talk to your spouse or a therapist about those types of things. It's not a loss of control or authority. I look at it kind of like Janine said in our last presentation, as a collaboration. When we're able to be vulnerable, we're collaborating with this other individual. It's not manipulating emotions to get a particular response in our favor, right? So we're not trying to coerce them into doing what we want them to do. That never works. Yeah.
One that happened to me when I was in a right now. It's like, oh, it's so it's like I'm crying. Yeah. Both of them just listen to me. Like, for example, if I was something wrong, I start crying. And then there's a machine that, she made me cry. And parents do it. I try not to do it, but you're mad about pain, but you start just crying. This what's that? I'm crying. Oh gosh, because I've had it with my little mother, and it works.
Yeah. It works, right? Again, it gets them to look good. It gets them to calm down, whatever it is, right? But it's actually not healing. It's not healthy, right? I love / hate this phrase because it comes up so often and it gives me a talking point. But you make me mad, right? So let's say that we yell and our teen comes in, I'm so sorry. Well, yeah, but like if you just didn't, if you just did your homework, mommy wouldn't have to get so mad, right? Oh my goodness. Like let's throw that as far away as we can, right? Your teen, your child didn't make you mad, right? Your reaction, right? Your history created the reaction given that scenario. You're probably familiar with this scenario at some point, like we talked about, right, as a child. And that is an unhealed part of you that creates this emotional experience that does damage because it did damage to you as a child, right? And that's not healed. And so we need to deal with that. So a more appropriate response might be, I felt mad when you chose not to listen to me, right? I feel anxious when you don't call and it's past the curfew, right? I get worried that you're not going to pass school because your grades aren't reflecting like you're doing the things you're supposed to be doing, right? I feel is way different than they're responsible for our emotions. It doesn't always have to be emotional or dramatic, right? It's not like this big drawn-out thing, right? We don't have to be like all crying and all of that kind of stuff. It can just be a simple conversation, right? Collaboration can happen at any level. It doesn't have to be big or dramatic. And it doesn't always have to be a dramatic event, right? We can be vulnerable over, like my 5-year-old has a really hard time with vegetables and things like that, right? Like I can be vulnerable at the dinner table, right? Like he's, throwing a fit and whatever, and I can say, hey, it seems like this is really hard for you. Here's some things that are really hard for me too. I get that, right? We can work together. We can create a plan, right? We can be vulnerable together and understand what we're feeling and what to do about it. And again, it's not weak, right? And we have to face the fact that oftentimes we were taught that it was, right? That it was weak to share emotion. It was weak to effectively share emotion as opposed to crying to say, I feel this, was often demeaned or dismissed. We have to face that, and we have to heal that part of us that says that this is a weak situation. So this is Dr. Dan Siegel. He says, connection means that we give our kids our attention, that we respect them enough to listen to them, that we value their contribution to problem solving, and that we communicate to them that we're on their side, whether we like the way they're acting or not. Here's the thing, right? We can't have connection unless there's vulnerability. And so in order to get connected with your kids, with yourself, you have to be open. That's the gateway to connection. The way to do this, it's kind of embedded in here, right? Like we're listening to them, we're talking to them, we're collaborating with them. It sounds a lot like vulnerability, right? You guys have any thoughts on this quote? Yeah.
Just a question. Short that statement where he says at the end, whether we like the way they're acting or not. I know that a lot of parents will feel like they're enabling their child in behavior that is something they don't agree with or don't support. And I, through my own wrestling with that, I found that that's not the same thing. That you can support that child even though you don't agree with the behavior they're engaged in a way that helps them feel that they're seen, heard, and loved. And that maybe a discussion on that behavior can be discussed at a later time, and you don't have to warn them of that.
100%. Yeah, that's great. Anyone else have any thoughts? Yeah.
I'm maybe more as once told all of my kids, I love you so much, but I do not what you're doing right now.
Right. And then we have to pair that with, does our behavior support that kind of comment, right? That's awesome. Yeah. Any other thoughts on this? Okay. So how do we achieve connection through vulnerability? First, we need to be present, and we talked about this before, other presenters talked about it. We need to limit distractions when we're trying to be vulnerable, right? So whether it's in the car, we're at the dinner table, we're on the couch, in the room, right? Are we distracted? Have we prepared for the moment of vulnerability, right? Are we doing what we can to be present with our children? Second, engage in active listening. This is really helpful, and it's helpful for anyone. This is like one of the marriage counseling kind of techniques. Reflect back what you're hearing, right? So oftentimes we spend a lot of time as parents thinking about our response, right? So they're talking, they're sharing all this these valuable golden nuggets, and our brain's just like, okay, how am I going to respond to this, right? What am I going to say next? And we miss the active listening. Did you have a comment? Yeah.
Versus, I put in that situation, I can feel that they're just place that I feel kind of relatable, and validating that.
It's kind of, are you suggesting that being relatable is helpful? Yeah, right? Again, looking at each other as humans and not necessarily as parent-child, although that's the roles you're playing in, right? But you are humans. You both have very similar experiences. It doesn't matter that they're 15 and that you're whatever age you are, right? Like, you've been there, and you're human, and you continuously experience the same type of emotions.
Yeah. What do you do when you do that, and then they say, but it's so different now? And I was, it was X, and I did this, and then you can say, tell me about that. How's it different?
Right, get curious, right? And it truly actually is different. The situations they're involved in are quite different, but the emotions, I would beg to differ, are the same, right? They're the same emotional experience.
Sorry, I was trying to say that there was a different, where there's more than one personality.
Sure.
I was trying to do that, more than one thing.
100%.
Different.
Yes. Yeah. So validating their feelings. Number 3, ask to join your teens in doing their preferred activities. This is one of the first things I ever asked parents to do, because I just had a dad the other day who was like, well, every time I go into the yard, I ask him if he wants to come, or every time I go to the store, I ask him if he wants to come, and he doesn't come. And he's like, I guess he just doesn't want to spend time with me. And I was like, well, I wonder, like, if you asked, can I play video games with you, what would he say? He might laugh at you at first, right? He might be like, oh my goodness. But he'd probably let you play, right? Or, hey, like, what are you doing tomorrow? What do you want to do this weekend? Can I come with you? Right? These are things that you're often kind of habited to listen to from your teens, right? Can I come with you? Especially my little kids, right? Can I come with you? Can I do this? Can I do that? It's okay for you to do the same, right? Can I hang out with you? Can I get to know your life, your experience? The second to last one, repair every time. What I mean by repair isn't simply like, I'm sorry, right? I want you to think in your mind, when was the last time and how frequently do you apologize to your children for your behavior? Versus how many times do you demand apologies for theirs, right? So an apology, according to Dr. Becky Kennedy, is not only saying I'm sorry and genuinely apologizing, right? Feeling genuinely sorry for what you've done, empathizing with their experience, understanding that what you've done has impacted them in a negative way. And then third, making a plan and communicating the plan for how you're going to show up differently next time, right? So that requires a lot of energy for us as parents. It's not simply just, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Same time, say that you think that they a lot of time to be over it 2 days and still skiing this from here.
Yeah.
You know, apologize, it won't be like real, it's like, should apologize, do it, but
Right.
they're gonna be going that it's not.
Yeah, perhaps. So you have to think about it. But I want you guys to think about something. Think about your personal experience. And perhaps for some of you, you've kind of come from experiences, especially in childhood, that were more or less traumatic or difficult for you. If your parent was able to genuinely heal, right, at whatever age you're currently at, if your parent was able to heal themselves from whatever they came through life with and work through all their stuff, or at least try to, right, make the steps, and they came to you and they said, hey, can I sit down with you? And they said, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything that I've done, right? And maybe they called out a specific instance, right? Maybe it was a specific situation. And they really went in depth about why that was important for them to think about, the healing that they did to work through that. And they came to you and said, this is what I'm going to do moving forward, right? Regardless of how long it's been, right? How many of you would be like, there's zero part of me that's going to forgive you? Maybe there are some circumstances like that, but I think in most cases, we'd be more than happy to embrace that vulnerability, right? Because as a kid, that's all we wanted was connection, right? We wanted our kids, or our parents to see us, right? We wanted them to hear us. We wanted to feel valued by them. And if our parent put in all that work and came to us, that would mean a lot, right? So never second guess yourself, right? Perhaps you've made lots of mistakes, as all parents do. But it's never too late to repair and make things better with your kids. And then lastly, put yourself in their shoes. Again, like when we parent, if we're in our roles, it's really hard to put ourselves in their shoes, right? Because we're so much older, we have so much more wisdom, we've been through life. But if we can strip the parent-child thing and just say, hey, they're another human experiencing emotion, I've been there, right? Or at least maybe I haven't been in that specific situation, but I could see why it's so difficult for them. It gives us more aptitude to be able to make the changes and to build that collaboration that we're hoping for. Okay. You guys have any questions about any of these? Okay. What's stopping you? Some of these have been mentioned. Sometimes it's a fear of losing control, right? We get so comfortable in our role as a parent, and being vulnerable means, again, going back to the previous slides, it's weak. We lose control. We don't really know how to do this, be vulnerable. There's a discomfort in showing emotion. That's usually tied to our life experience, right? It's not always comfortable to say, I feel sad, or I feel upset, or I feel remorse. Things like that aren't natural for us. Third, and this is what I work a lot with parents on, is unresolved trauma or traumatic experiences that we've been through. And those don't always have to be drastic, right? Like not all of us were abused as a child. Not all of us went through really traumatic experiences, but it could just be the neglect from a parent, or it could be the dismissiveness of a parent, or an experience that we had as a child, or a series of experiences that, again, like we talked about, are influencing the way that we parent. That are getting in the way of us being vulnerable and building connection. Lack of awareness. There's a lot of times that we don't even know. I mean, I would beg to say that you guys know because you're here, right? You guys are trying to improve and trying to gain some skills, and I think that's amazing. But the majority of people aren't here, right? The majority of people aren't. And so I think sometimes there's a lack of awareness. We don't even know, or maybe we're just kind of numbed, right, to the idea that we impact our child in a negative way. We project our stuff, and it's all on them, and when they change, I'll change, right? That seems like the defensive way to go. It's never productive, but it seems like that's a typical response for most parents. I really like this. Lastly, perfectionism, right? We can't admit that we have faults, right? That we have imperfections, things that we're battling. We feel them, right? As a parent, we feel them, but it's very difficult for us to express that and to share that with our teens or our children. Dr. Dan Siegel says the following: as parents become more aware and emotionally healthy, their children reap the rewards and move towards health as well. That means that integrating and cultivating your own brain is one of the most loving and generous gifts you can give your children. What are your guys' thoughts on that? Yeah.
Just personally, it's an interesting perspective for me. I think I needed to do that, and my children's mental health journey caused me to do that, and it's incredible what power that's brought. But then it's been interesting to go the generation above my parents and recognize that they are limited in their ability to have compassion with me because they're not willing to do the work that they need to do.
Amen.
And yes. It's frustrating, and they kind of pawn it off as, well, I'm set in my ways, near the end of my life, and so it becomes really frustrating. But also, I notice that it causes a disconnect between them and their connection to those children. Sure. Because they haven't done that work for themselves. And it's not easy. Having done the work and still needing to do that work, it's really hard to do. It's heavy and painful, but right. It's worth the investment.
Right, so rewarding, right? That's awesome. Yes, Janine first.
Along with what we're saying, I work with a lot of parents or parents, and so they, I don't understand all this mental health stuff. Like, I'm doing this fine, and I'm lost. I was able to say, are you? Yes. Do you need to finish that? Like, it's never supposed to get all the support you need, you're feel like you're like, they're really, it's all good.
You know, one of the most interesting comments I get from parents, especially with defiant teens, they'll come in with their teen and be like, I just don't get it. I was never like that. And I start laughing every time because I can't help myself. Maybe it's not professional, but I laugh because I'm like, there's no way. I think you're remembering this way too kindly, right? You're forgetting or numbing or suppressing your stuff, right, which is unhealthy, and it's kind of perpetuating this difficult relationship. Yeah, you had a comment.
I was gonna say, it's kind of like the physical health care. If you are so tired, or in the middle of a event, you can't help anybody. Right. So you feed your family or yourself or anything or work, you're exhausted. True. So it's the same with mental health. If you can't help steer your own stuff, then you can't help it affect your family members or friends.
Right, and think about how effective, right, and rewarding parenting, family relationships can be if we, and I use this word when I'm working with couples, it's okay to be selfish, meaning work on yourself first, right? Whenever couples or teens and parents come into the session, it's always like, this is what they could work on. I really hope they get the tools they need, right? Be selfish, right? Focus on you. Get your healing done so that you can kind of behave the way that you want to. Yeah.
But one of the things you can't really you can't see what your kids are going through unless you work on yourself personally, because your eyes are open. I just call it my eyes are closed.
Right.
It's really different production that way. And then when I work on myself, I think my brain is learning more, and I can see that it's not totally or it's happening. Or if I'm, and for example, if my lady girl's situation where her friends are treating her right, and then I'll look to her. So you know what I'm doing to this, right? I think I need more to be aware, so I can teach her to be aware. But if you're not aware, I can tell you it's real. If you're not aware, then you won't know how to see the things and back and help and know things and say, well, she's a good person, but she doesn't think that was really going to help you. Instead of saying bad person, I'd say she's a good person. This is really going to help things.
Right. Collaborate again, right? 100%. Final reflection. What can I start doing today? These are just things that I find to be helpful for parents. You probably are thinking, like, what can I do right now or this week? Number one, express emotions openly. I felt hurt when you walked away, etc. Ask your teen about their experience before offering advice. Lean into healing yourself, right? If you have stuff, go figure it out. Go face it. It's a long and arduous process, but it's so rewarding. And your teens, regardless, or your children, regardless of how old they are, would really appreciate it. It'd be a great gift for them. Admit when you don't know what to say, but want to be there. Someone else, I think, was sitting over there in our previous lectures, and they said, I just don't know what to say. Just be present. Just sit there, right? Go sit on the couch, go sit on the bed, go drive in the car, and say nothing. Presence oftentimes outweighs solutions, right? Just being there, just being open. Ask your teen, what helps you feel close to me? They might not know, right? So you could offer some ideas of things that help you to feel close to people. But get familiar, get curious about their experience. And then, I'm sorry, here's what I will do different. That's what we talked about in repairing. Some results: strengthen mutual trust and emotional safety, collaboration, internalizing of healthy emotion regulation, encouraging open communication, increased self-awareness and resilience, fosters a family culture of honesty and support, promotes empathy and emotional intelligence, intentional parenting that welcomes growth. It's okay to grow as a parent, right? It's okay to grow as an individual. It's okay to say, you know what, up until this point, it hasn't worked and I'm willing to change now. It doesn't matter if you're a young parent like myself, you have teens, or you're a grandparent. It's never too late, and it's actually really cool to do it. It feels really good, right? The process is hard, but it feels really good to heal and become the best version of yourself. And again, your teen or your child will appreciate it. All right, guys, that's all I got. I'm not sure how much time we have. We got some minutes. Okay, so is there any questions or things that I could maybe provide some guidance on? Yeah.
Mostly when I feel like the part of the old man see that we have a wide range of our oldest one is 20 years old. And so I'm so sorry you're the oldest if we missed that. But we did the best we could at the time with what we had. We're learning, so they're getting better as it goes. But we have like, I had recently with my 20-year-old, I did a conversation where I was thinking with him, it was like, we wanted to open up, but we were so close. We opened up. Your thing was that I believe like how much do I share and how much do I open up, because I don't want to overwhelm it. And I grew up with that, so like, he's like, what do you do with me? I'm like, because I'm learning now that that's wrong, for me to open up so much about my emotions and gently and find you or you don't have a problem and they go up. Because it's like, well, you want me to open up, make them open. So I'm like, yeah, I have a right to know it's wrong. But in the point where you said like, well, the reward of me as a parent to start healing and how that just changed my child's self. And it's like, now he sees that well, it's never too late to start going and learning and like getting better and healing, and then hopefully he's more emotionally mature that when it was that stage.
Right.
And he was able to mom,
Right.
be vulnerable, and that doesn't mean that I'm going to overshare something. Well, he's obviously 20 now, like know how much, and that is actually healthy for our relationship. Like, like I'm having a hard time with this and this.
Yeah.
And like I'm sad because of this, and like I'll show that my emotions, that I'm human.
Yes, right? We're all humans just trying the best we can.
See how that helps in like be more aware now. It's never too late to start opening up and like stuff like that. So it's like I'm so sorry. At that point in your life, like maybe 8 years ago, you needed me to open up and I didn't do it. But I want to like try to find that.
This is what I'm going to do now, right? Yeah, that's wonderful. Any other questions or comments? 5 minutes. Okay. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Along with that comment, we call it the apology tour at our house. As we learn to do better as parents, for the older children that didn't get this better level of parenting, we've been apologizing quite a bit. They've been very graceful in accepting that apology. But the other thing that I've learned that's been really interesting from my earlier comment where I get frustrated that my parents aren't learning. The other thing that I also feel is more grace for them, because when we know better, we do better. If we didn't know better, and I'm holding them to a standard that they didn't know better, that's not fair to them either.
Right.
And so I'm trying to learn how to strike that balance of grace, but also, hey, let's learn better, and do better.
Right.
The other thing I was thinking was that, so when it comes to the parents, or your parents can go role, when you're using kids, when they're around them, you must be careful of their influence because they can crash all the things you're building. And all of a sudden it's done by just one word, one phrase, and it did it up.
Right.
Something I'm learning right now is that to be able to create kids or a safe haven where our words, if there's somewhere else that have the same ideas that we have, and that is toxic, or the person is toxic, and not being over there, that they can, or do something or because all that you're building, somebody can just kill it, and just trash it, just like one phrase, just grab it something else.
Well, maybe, right? So the model that I kind of live by in my parenting, what I teach parents, is like the goal is not to prevent harm to our children, right? They're going to be harmed. They're gonna be around grandparents or friends or whatever, teachers who do or say the wrong thing, right? You can't prevent that. And if you tried, that'd be a very controlling experience, right? It'd be very stressful. Perhaps a better approach is to provide an experience, a home, an environment where when they go get harmed, they know where to go, right? It's so hard, right? So teach your kids to be assertive, right? Grandpa, I really didn't like that comment. And if that conversation can't happen, then you need to figure out what you're going to do about it, right? Maybe some boundaries are needed. But if you're trying to teach your kids healthy ways to cope with emotion, assertive communication strategies, and they're surrounding themselves with people who will demean them or whatever, right? I don't know exactly each situation, but maybe some boundaries are needed. Maybe some adult conversations are needed so that this situation can get a little bit healthier. All right, guys, I think we're out of time, but I appreciate you and thank you guys so much. If you have any questions, again, you can just ask me outside of this.